Monday. It's just a Monday around here, isn't it, Paul? Welcome back, everybody, to First Ring Daily, where Brad's gotten a little ambitious today.
What happened? What have you done?
I've decided to fix my shower at approximately 9 a.m. this morning. I figured that was a good time.
Not on the weekend when it's your time?
Yep. Taking it from the man. No, it's just a leaking shower faucet, and it's progressively gotten worse, and now it's annoying me too much, where it's just not just a drip every 2 to 3 minutes. Now it's maybe a drip every minute. And
Sure.
So I have it all disassembled. I believe I have the correct replacement part, and after the show, we will find out if Brad can put the puzzle back together. Or flood his house.
Yep. Nice. Well, Good luck with that. I've, based on my own experience doing home renovations and repairs, I don't think you'll have any problems.
Good. Good. Things that are not going to give you a problem, Paul, anymore is actually SharePoint Online storage. I know that's exactly what you were thinking. Yep.
SharePoint Online storage?
Yeah, if those things fill you with happiness, whoops, wrong button, you should definitely go check out Petri.com, because Microsoft is increasing the allotted storage per license by 20-fold.
Really? From what to what?
That's a really good question. I should probably have had that handy. But they're actually...
Like from something stupid to something reasonable?
No, so it's basically the way it works out is that I believe, and I know somebody will correct me if I'm wrong here because they never are shy about that, is that when you buy a SharePoint Online license, you get a certain amount of allotment per storage per license. And it previously was 0.5 gigabytes per user, and now it's up to 1 terabyte.
Yeah. Here you go. They're only like 5 years too late.
Yeah.
It's good.
But it realistically could save some people some money, because if you're paying per extra storage, which Microsoft offers.
Yeah, no, it's good. I mean, I'm just surprised they didn't do this a long time ago.
Yeah, I just appreciate that, Paul. They offer additional storage purchasing on SharePoint, but not OneDrive. That would be nice.
It is a commercial venture.
You're a commercial venture.
Sure.
Anyways, other things in the commercial venture side of life, Paul. So Microsoft's got, it's a funny thing. Microsoft doesn't have a counterfeit issue on their hand, but they do, because they're getting dragged through the mud a little bit here.
Did you? What's your take on this? I mean, people have been very. I was going to say violent is not the right word, but really sharp-edged opinions on this particular case. I mean, did you look at this at all?
Yeah, I did. So super high level, and Paul probably has more details, but there was an individual who was basically reselling Microsoft licenses, passing them off as genuine when they were not in fact genuine. They were stolen. But it's more so than just that, and it was kind of under this veil of like recycling computers and making life easier and just being green about that. But when you actually read about the details of this case, it's not so like he was just a good guy trying to make a living. He actually had a full-scale operation where he was printing counterfeit discs with the holograms and that kind of stuff on it to make it look genuine. More so than that, it's not like this guy was just doing this and then he was, out shopping with his family and then got tackled by FBI agents and taken to jail. He was giving, I know of at least one warning saying, hey, you can't do this anymore. And then he proceeded to keep doing it, and then is finally paying the price. He even pled guilty. He wasn't shy about it. So my personal standpoint is that if you are knowingly copying software, even though it doesn't really matter, it's not your software, especially on that scale, and trying to pass it off as genuine, you are up the creek without a paddle.
I think the issue here is not so much the counterfeiting as it is the IP theft. That the intellectual property of Windows and the code and so forth belongs to Microsoft or to Dell, which was the company he was also impersonating. The other thing, and I just know this from my own kind of, it's going to sound weird when I say this, but my own experience with law enforcement, if that makes any sense. Not because I've been on the wrong side of it, but
go on.
I worked in banks and so forth. There's this kind of belief, and I think it's from TV and movies and things, that in order to charge someone or something with a crime, the person who was the victim of that crime has to bring the charge. In other words, you get it mugged by some guy in an alleyway, and it's up to you to charge that person with the crime, and then the police will go arrest him maybe or not, And that's actually not how it works. And in this case, Microsoft was not the party that charged this person with a crime. It was the U.S. government, and I believe it was the Customs Department or whatever, because he was legally importing this bogus software. Microsoft did not, kind of back away from it. I mean, they supported the case, obviously. I think they're required to do so by law because when it's an intellectual property thing, part of the ownership of IP is you have to protect your ownership of it. I think the ruling was a little harsh, as far as the jail time and the fee amount. But it's weird to watch the world kind of line up. It shouldn't be, but it's weird to watch the world line up under partisan flags. The anti-Microsoft crowd. Screw Microsoft going after the little, beating up on this poor little guy. And then the Microsoft crowd, the cheerleaders, saying, guys, you got to back off. Microsoft's a good company. They didn't do anything wrong. And it's a little more nuanced than that. Microsoft's a corporation. I think we hold these entities to kind of moral standards that just don't apply in the business world. Sorry, guys. I don't know. What you said fundamentally is what I agree with, that this guy went into this to make money, knew he was doing something wrong, purposefully impersonated Dell and Microsoft, made really picture-perfect disks, found some place in China, because where else would you go to illegally create software that looked exactly like the real thing? It's hard to see the altruistic angle of this story, but people do. So I don't know.
There was also, and I fully recommend everyone do their own research into this. There was actually in the court documents, there was between him and his business partner who was helping him do all this, where he actually said, hey, find customers who aren't going to question where this is coming from. And at that point, you are knowingly committing a crime, and then you are knowingly trying to cover it up. And so...
look, anyone who uses a Windows PC, anyone who's used a Windows PC over the years especially, will understand that one of the bad things about using Windows over the years was that over time, the restore disk that used to come with the PC kind of went away. But even if it was provided, it was often impossible or at least very difficult to make that thing yourself. You get one chance these days to make it yourself. Microsoft has eased matters in recent years because Windows 10 has so many ways that you can reset the system, including a downloadable ISO, which allows you to do that very thing. It works on every PC that runs Windows 10. It's pretty great. But even as Windows 10 was coming into being, they took away the ability to go back and grab the Windows 7 and Windows 8.1 ISOs, which used to be a thing, by the way, very briefly, but it was. And so it's understandable the frustration on the part of users. I think people who see this story think, well, yeah, but, this guy was providing a service that Microsoft wouldn't provide. Right. And okay. But that's not his job. And it's also not legal for him to do that. And again, he knew what he was doing. I think that's the biggest thing. It's just, when I look at the two sides, and the two sides aren't really Microsoft and this guy, but that's how we kind of see it. It's really the government. I think the government overreached a bit on this, but that's almost beside the point. I think Microsoft's actions are defensible. You may not agree with the verdict and whatever, but its actions as a company defending its intellectual property, I think, are understandable. That man's actions, however, as an individual, behaving in the eye of the law, so to speak, I don't think are defensible.
Right. And the other thing you got to consider, too, it's not like Microsoft is trying to stop you from repairing your own phone by replacing the battery or anything else like that, such as Apple.
Well, no, because Microsoft doesn't make phones.
I was trying to be out there's worse
and
things to be
they
upset
never
about.
did, Brad.
Oh, that's the route we're going. We're all going to walk into build and then they're going to go like Men in Black. And what was a Nokia? Moving on from Nokia, though, there's Google has some Fuchsia. Actually, kind of very similar to, this back here. This is in my backyard. This is like a purple or maybe a fuchsia tree. And there's some white flowery tree back here. I think it's a dogwood. And then some very ever green. It's springtime and the allergies and facial region are
I think I see some Linux back there as well as some fuchsia. Yeah.
Okay. Dig yourself out of this hole.
Well, I've never. I don't think I've written too much about Fuchsia so far. There isn't much to say about it. It's a fairly secretive Google project based on people who have examined the source code because it just appeared last year on Git, which is really strange. It appears to be a Google-made operating system, and many have speculated that it will be the successor to Android and/or Chrome OS. And when you run it on a Pixelbook, which you can do these days, it looks a lot like Chrome OS, and it runs Android apps, or we think it's going to run Android apps. Back when Google was rumored to be working on such a system, what they eventually announced was adding Android apps to Chrome OS. And some people, I think, were a little thrown by that because they thought, well, okay, maybe this is what they really meant. And, Fuchsia as a standalone thing isn't really a thing. But it's an interesting thing to look at. And I pulled out a couple of what I think are the salient points. But from the perspective of like Microsoft guys, we know that Microsoft recently adopted Linux for use in an embedded system running as part of their IoT strategy, right? So the Azure Sphere OS. And the explanation for that is that Linux is much more componentized and small than Windows, and it's better on these kinds of devices. What's interesting about Fuchsia, one of the things, is that it's not based on a Linux kernel like Android is, like Chrome OS is. It's based on a different kernel that's even more scalable downwards than is Linux. And so in the same way that Microsoft is looking for this new platform for them to use on something that's smaller and more componentized than what they had before, it kind of looks like Google is doing the same. And it has a Windows 10 bent to it in the sense that they expect Fuchsia to run on a variety of devices that spans all these different categories, all the way up to phones, tablets, and PCs. So, it's interesting. I wrote about it only because someone had examined it and saw there was information in it suggesting it's going to run Android apps. That's new information. I've been researching Linux and open source and other things lately. And I'm kind of curious about things like how Linux is or is not part of, Android. Obviously it's a Linux kernel, but it's not technically a Linux system for a variety of reasons. And why did Google go in the direction it went, and what might they be doing, kind of with this new system? So I just wanted to kind of open the conversation on Fuchsia because Google I/O is coming up. They may or may not say anything. That's the trouble with these guys. We get all excited about, just like Microsoft, are they going to say anything? And then the show passes and it's like, no. So that's happened in the past, and maybe it'll happen. But at some point, I think they're going to open up about this. And I'm curious. Yeah. I'm kind of curious where this goes, in the same way that I'm curious about where, Microsoft's future platform stuff goes.
Realistically, a great opportunity, but we have no idea. It could almost be a week from Tuesday.
Yeah, that's right.
It's Google I/O for those who aren't familiar. Build is on essentially on Monday.
Although, by the way, I'm sorry to interrupt, but they extended, I don't know if we talked about this. There's actually now a second Build keynote on Tuesday.
Well, Paul, the question is, do we go to that, or do we make a mockery of ourselves on Twitter while Google's doing theirs?
Well, so I can help make that decision, or help you make that decision, because the second Build keynote is Joe Belfiore and Windows and kind of client stuff. So I'm probably going to have to watch the Google thing on replay.
Or we could try to do it at the same
time.
Do
both.
We should just bring a Bluetooth
Only if we're sitting
speaker
next to each other and telling each other what's happening on the other thing.
Yep. You watch that one. I'll watch this one.
And then we'll tweet it.
Yes. That's going to be
interesting.
A grade A cluster.
I think so, yeah.
And other clusters that are happening right now, T-Mobile and Sprint are going to try to merge, provided they get all government regulatory approval. And I think it's a merger, but I think T-Mobile is the one that kind of comes out on top and is the kingpin out of this. And
I think Google, I don't have the numbers in front of me, but it looked like based on the valuations of the two companies, that T-Mobile might be roughly 3 times the size of Sprint or something from a financial standpoint, at least twice. I don't remember.
Yeah, I have really strong mixed feelings about this, mostly in the negative that...
as you should.
Because right now, essentially in the U.S., we have a duopoly between Verizon and AT&T, and then T-Mobile is this kind of young gun up-and-comer that's doing a lot of cool stuff, and then you had Sprint, who kind of regulated into this value brand thing, And there was a one point, for those of you who are younger than me, but not too old, I guess. I don't know, whatever. It used to be a problem with AT&T, and then they all got split up, and that's kind of how a bunch of these companies got started. And they're just slowly gobbling each other back up. And if we end up with basically 3 mobile carriers in the U.S., that's not good for people who don't like to spend a lot of money.
So I I don't know too much about this aspect of it, but that did happen in Canada. So they only have 3 carriers. So now there's no price competition at all. It's all super expensive. Prices went up. One of the nice things about T-Mobile in the U.S. has been that because they weren't able to merge with Sprint and form a third larger carrier, they've really done something incredible with pricing and offers. They brought back unlimited plans, and they forced the big carriers, AT&T and Verizon, to do the same, right? And sometimes they've trailed by a few months, but they've always kind of had to catch up so they can compete. And that's the value of that kind of competitive landscape. I use Project Fi, and one of the things I really like about it is, well, everything, but they do everything differently. The way they charge for the services, the way that everything works internationally, full speed. It's really cool. And, but Project Fi doesn't have the user base to influence the big carriers. So I don't know that I'm not worried about Project Fi per se, but they don't have the ability to influence AT&T and Verizon. And I think once T-Mobile is the size of those companies, roughly, there's no impetus for them to bother. They've achieved their goal, which is the size and the power thing. And the other aspect of the story I think that's really important is the 5G bit, right? We're in the middle of I don't know if you've noticed, there's been kind of a weird xenophobic thing going on in Washington for the past, 18 months or so. And they're really after the Chinese. And one of the big fears is that the Chinese technologically are going to catch up with the United States. The blocked merger of Broadcom with Qualcomm, or the Broadcom purchase of Qualcomm, I should say, was done out of xenophobic fears. Now, Broadcom's actually based in Singapore, which is not part of China, but let's not worry about the details. Our president certainly doesn't. The point here is that a U.S. company pushing forward with 5G and doing so at a speed that will enable us to lead worldwide is very attractive to the current government. And if you look at their announcement, it's all 5G, 5G, 5G. That's the point. That's why we're doing this. Yeah. And I think they might have found the solution. I think this is going to get them over the regulatory hurdles, because I think that will take precedent over any antitrust fears about competition and consumer pricing and so forth. And I think that means we're all screwed as
and my pushback to that marketing campaign is that Verizon, I believe, has already announced that they're going to be rolling out 5G this year, and I believe AT&T has as well. And so there you go.
I just hope Project Fi doesn't go away. I don't care if there's only one carrier, as long as I can use this other service. But yeah, I've always kind of I look at T-Mobile repeatedly, because T-Mobile kind of hits on the edge of some of the things that Project Fi does. They don't have transparent pricing, which I really don't like.
Right.
And that's one of the many things that's kind of kept me away. I've done the 2G in Europe thing, and I find it to be inadequate. Other people report differently, but it's just not working for me. So when I when I kind of look at it, it's like, I don't know. But I think now, if they are able to merge with this with Sprint, I think that just goes away. Like, I think you're going to find the competitiveness here dissipates over time. It just becomes less and less.
Yeah, if only we had some other sort of examples of that, like in the home broadband markets or anything.
Yeah.
To learn from.
Yeah. When was the last time lack of competition led to better prices and features? I mean, that was what happened to Internet Explorer when IE6 took over the market. Microsoft literally gave up on it for like 3 years. They stopped improving it. Why bother?
Yep. And things that are going to get upgraded here, along with Internet Explorer 6, is 1803 should be rolling out, I believe, today, hitting that final mark. Typical Microsoft fashion is sometime around 2 p.m. Eastern time, give or take a couple hours or days at this point.
Listen, you've been working for 6 months on this major Windows version. There's absolutely no reason for anyone to get up early on a Monday, come into work, and make this thing. You guys sleep in, take your time. Don't worry about it. That's my attitude.
Always chipper on a Monday here on First Ring Daily, folks. You got anything else for today, Paul, before I go try to flood my house with water?
No. And actually, what these people are getting is a much calmer version of what you encountered when we first signed Teams.
I talked Paul off the edge, and I'm not talking about the browser before the show started, to keep things in a positive light note, because it is a Monday with beautiful weather outside. And Paul, very tragic news to potentially report here at this late hour is that it might be raining Thursday. And it might even be raining Wednesday. And if I don't get to golf this week, because I've been looking forward to this, I will.
Yeah. Which reminds me, maybe not the greatest thing to go through on the air per se, but I am flying on Friday to Seattle because my wife is coming with me right for the weekend. When are you? Thank you for not using your middle finger for that.
I was trying to get something out of my eye, but go on.
He's like, are you now? When do you fly to Seattle? Saturday?
This is almost impressive, and I will be able to explain maybe later after the show about why my flying time is when it is. Don't overread that in any way, because I screwed up. That's the moral of the story here. I land in Seattle at 8:45 Saturday morning.
Oh, yikes. So,
yep.
Yeah, the reason I ask is I try not to look to head to trips. When I have multiple trips lined up. I just got back from Boston, but now I'm looking at my flight on Friday, and I don't actually get in until like 1:40 p.m. Eastern, which is, whatever it is, 10:40, whatever.
Oh, I see why this is a problem, because of the podcast.
Yeah, this is a problem for the Friday show.
We'll figure that out later in the week, because I don't feel like doing that right now. But for those people wondering why I'm getting into Seattle at the crack of dawn, it's because I will leave Cincinnati at 7 a.m., and then it's a 4-hour flight, but 3-hour time difference. So it's...
Oh, I was afraid you were flying overnight. Okay.
No, that's on the way home. I'm flying overnight. But the direct flight from Cincinnati to Seattle leaves 7 a.m. Every day. And so if I want to take it, that's what I'm on.
Gotcha. Okay. All right, we'll figure out Friday off.
Yep. So, all right, folks. Well, that wraps it up for today. Have yourselves a wonderful Monday, and hopefully you are getting the gorgeous weather that I am, and hopefully I'll be back tomorrow without a flooded house. Otherwise, my wife might kill me. Have yourselves a good day.